Welcome to the JALT Call podcast. The following episode is an interview recorded during the PANSIG conference in May of 2025. In this recording, Robert Dykes of Sojo University interviews Alex Burke as she shares her journey from musician and civil servant to educator and researcher in Japan. Driven by her experience with dyslexia and neurodiversity, she highlights the power of assistive technology, inclusive teaching, and audio-based learning. Burke advocates reducing stigma around neurodiversity and designing classrooms that support all learners naturally. Enjoy the show.
So hello, my name is Robert Dykes, and I'm here today to interview Alex Burke, Alexandra Burke. Which do you prefer?
In writing, Alexandra, but face-to-face, Alex.
Alex, okay. I know you as Alex, but then I saw, when you publish, it's always Alexandra, and I'm like, oh no, what should I use? All right, so is it okay if I call you Alex?
Absolutely, go
for
right ahead.
For this interview. All right, so I want to first kind of get to know you a little bit, get to know Alex a little bit before we jump into the teaching and the call stuff. So you came to Japan a little later than life than a lot of teachers I've met.
Yes.
What did you do before Japan?
Okay, before Japan, I had an interrupted education. I'm dyslexic, and I did leave school early. I worked as a professional musician for a number of years, and then I decided to go into the formal workplace, and I ended up working in the civil service in South Australia, and then I met my husband, and he and I decided that we would like to try working in the national capital. So after we got married, we shot through to the national capital, and we got jobs there. And at that point, I was doing a writing course at work, and the lecturer said, "You write really well. Where did you go to university?" And I said I didn't. And then she said, "Well, it's about time you did." And she introduced me to the University of Canberra, which has a policy and administration in terms of economics. What should government do? What should the private sector do? And so she recommended I have a look at that. So I applied, got in, and I studied there part-time. So I was working in the civil service in the daytime, and then at night I was going to the university and being lectured by people who were right at the heart of economic reform, and then going and working in that environment in the daytime. So I had the opportunity to do management training, and I became a very high-end user of Excel and of functions in Microsoft Word, as in publishing level.
Right.
And things like automatic page numbering, tables of contents, automatic indexing, and I learned all of those skills. And I was running very large databases, public consultation. People would give their comments to the minister, and we were logging them, and we might have a database that could be 1,000 lines long and about 50 entries wide.
So your current research focus is neurodiversity.
That's right.
When did that come into the picture?
When did that come into the picture? Well, I was a musician, and I'd already been sacked by 3 music teachers for not being able to read music. And I used to think I was lazy, but it turns out that I was actually just not able to read music on a printed sheet because it just moves. So when I got into university, I'm not good at doing note-taking. I tend, like many dyslexics, to fall into a pattern of trying to write verbatim, and that's just impossible.
Right.
So, but I can remember everything I hear. And so I would ask permission to record the lectures, and I recorded them, and I would simply listen to the lectures a second time, and then I just remember everything. So, and that would get me through tests, it get me through, because I have like this recall, that's my special ability.
Right.
So, but again, I thought I was probably just being lazy and not being organised. But when I got into university, suddenly I didn't have to handwrite. I could use tech for writing.
Right.
and I would do dragging and dropping. I would do I'd use macros to put in the citations. I used a whole lot of assistive technology that just seemed logical to do. So I was a very early user of far end skills, and now I can bring those out and teach them to others at this point.
Kind of your interest was self-taught. It came from your own I don't want to say issues, your own barriers.
Yeah, I just was looking for ways around things.
And you wanted to understand why things were,
well, partly because I saw it happening again in my own family. I saw the pattern repeating because I knew that my father had been dyslexic. There were other people in my generation who were dyslexic, and then my kid came home from elementary school in Australia with a page covered in red. And it was like watching history repeat, and it was frustrating. And both the kids were having that experience, and it was repeating my experience of, what you are saying doesn't matter, the shape of your handwriting matters.
Okay.
And that had been enough to make me drop out of school. So the worst thing a teacher wrote about me was interested in the unusual and bypasses the rest. And that actually turned out to be my skill. And it made me a really good researcher. It made me a very good networker to look for things and look for causation patterns. So when I was doing research for policy issues in Australia, I could use those skills. And some people say that's a dyslexic skill too. That analytical ability is perhaps a dyslexic trait. So fast forward, go to university, struggle with the handwriting, but fine on all the assignments. So I simply weighted my work into the stuff I could do on the keyboard, and then knew that I would just scrape through with the paper tests at the end of the process. So yeah, that was my background there. And then due to various changes in the Australian environment, my husband said, let's go to Japan. And so I said, yeah, okay. And we came over. I became over on the JET program. I was 39, and he was too old at 40 to join. So he came over as my handbag, and he was looking after the kids, and I was teaching.
So your first experience teaching then was JET program in Japan, or did you do?
I was teaching music before that.
Okay,
and even though I can't read it, I was actually teaching music workshops to people who couldn't read music.
Okay.
And had never played music, and they'd come into my workshop with no experience, and they would walk out with about 4 tunes they could play on an Irish tin whistle. And a lot of them graduated onto other instruments over time. But I had a really good teacher who had taught me. He was from Ireland. He was an amazing music teacher, and he just said, doesn't matter if you can't read, use your skills. And that's what I keep saying to my students. I often break out my flute at the beginning of the first class, and I say to them, I can't read music, but it's not going to stop me now. But teachers saying, you can't do this, you can't progress, is a problem. And that's where we come back into IT. So for me, using audio is a natural process. And when I came into the education program, I was a high school ALT, and the first thing I started doing was making recordings in the staff room of English-Japanese lists of words and phrases. And the executive were watching me, and then I said, well, can we do that in the class? And there was general shock, but because I was a bit older, I had experience of writing briefings and very succinct points. I knew exactly how to write it, to write a proposal, put the proposal up, and the executive said yes. So I started a KTIs in the classroom in 2005.
Wow.
And it worked so well, even though some phones could only record for 15 seconds. Out of 900 students, 895 had a phone. The other 5 got an audio tape, and we would students who couldn't record we would do infrared transmission of files. So all the students learned how to do infrared transmission of files to the students who couldn't use the recording function. And this is, going back a long time. But the impact was the audio meant that students suddenly were getting 80 to 90% on speaking tests or on listening tests. And we made them harder and harder and harder. And eventually we got up to 5 distractors, long distractors, and we reduced the exposures to once.
Wow.
And they were still getting 80%. And that was like we knew it was interesting. Then I was invited to present that to at the state level, and other people picked up on the idea, and that thing about using the concept of banning the phones in the classrooms was broken at that point. And I also taught that at a JALT conference in 2009.
Okay.
So yes, I have a long history with phones and tablets, devices.
Wow.
In
So
education.
almost 16 years of research then for neurodiversity.
Yep.
And so before we get further into your research, can you or will you please define neurodiversity for us?
Okay. Well, let's just first, we'll just dispel a myth. Okay. Anybody who's had a corona test in the last few years, if you've ever had one, that technology was invented by a person with ADHD. And unfortunately, Professor Kerry Nollis, and he died in 2019. He never got to see what the end result was of his technology. He got a Nobel Prize for it, and he was, by accounts, a difficult man. But he invented something that became really useful to the world right at the time that the world needed it. So we shouldn't be judging. You shouldn't be looking at saying, oh, that person is limited by this or that person is limited by that.
So the reason I'm asking is because, when we started talking, I had never really heard the term neurodiverse. And I've seen a lot of your presentations. And I guess why I'm asking is there might be neurodiverse people out there that don't know that they're neurodiverse.
Oh, yeah.
So when I say, can you define neurodiversity, you said the words dyslexia, and I think you said ADHD. What else falls under this umbrella of neurodiversity?
Okay. There's also the point of handwriting. So the handwriting coordination, you might be really good at reading or speaking, but maybe you can't write neatly, and that is, or you can't get the words out, or you can't write neatly, and the chances are you'll probably be erasing everything. And I used to erase things to the point that there were holes in the page, and so that is a difficulty, and it's I think it can be a little bit hard here because in Japanese culture, kanji is an art form as well as a tool for expressing mastery. It's an art form, and it's very hard to be. It's hard not to be good at something which is so definitively cultural. But in reality, if I write something and you write something and we write on a typewriter, nobody can tell the difference.
Right.
And that is, we need to think about when is it beneficial to make somebody handwrite something and when is it not. So, and the handwriting doesn't mean anything about your aptitude, your interest. And people who have a handwriting difficulty, like dysgraphia, will probably write at about 30% slower than other students. So when you're timing or planning your activities, you might want to just add another 5 minutes. And you can just add extension items for people who are finished.
You finish early,
because the pressure of being the last person writing when everybody else is finished and they're all chatting or whatever, that's actually really, really, it's very hard because it's a constant reminder. I'm broken. I'm not. I'm
slow.
I'm slow. There's something wrong with me. I'm lazy, and we want to try and move away from that. So that is an issue, and then there's the spelling. So you can have. As I do, I have a difficulty with handwriting, difficulty with mathematics, just to accept particular concepts. And people say it just is, but I actually need proof, and I need proof every time.
Do these have diagnosis? Dyslexia is the medical term.
Yep.
So what's handwriting? Like I have terrible handwriting. Is there a term for this? A diagnosis term?
At the moment it's according to the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. 5 of the American Psychological...
DSM, 5, yeah.
So the American Psychological Association. The category is writing disorder.
Okay.
So it's still got the word disorder.
Disorder.
So, and that is that's something where we've got a little way to go on that yet. That's sort of still that concept, okay, that people are broken. And for self-esteem, people need to focus less on the things that they're not good at, and then focus more on the things that they are good at. And
easier said than done. But
it is easier said than done. There are ways around it though, and that is on us. This is where IT is so good,
right?
Because it just it removes the time that it takes to handwrite something. And then you have the red line in the word processing package. The red line tells you when your spelling's off, and the blue line tells you when your grammar's off.
Right.
And a lot of teachers using those things themselves, and that those things can take that pressure off. Something which is also there is the autism spectrum, and we're still learning more and more about autism, what it means.
I hear that as time goes on, the spectrum is getting wider, right? So
the spectrum probably already was wide. We're just learning to see it.
That's what I mean. Yeah. That you hear all these people saying, oh, that the cases of autism are going up. No. The diagnosis of autism is getting better.
Yeah,
right?
recognition is better, and but the thing is that autism itself confers a set of really useful skills.
Right.
And and I see students who may or may not have autism, who have very autistic, perhaps mannerisms or approaches, and some of them are exceptional researchers. They are absolutely unbeatable, and their recall is amazing. So we need to stop. We need to take off the pejorative attitude to it, and that really is just fear. I mean, people need to stop worrying about fear. And this is a generational cycle because basically when someone's small, in Japan you'll get screened for handwriting when you enter elementary school, but the parents may or may not accept hearing that because nobody wants their kid to be different. And I went through that. One of my kids had a developmental thing with a hip disorder, and I was really upset, and it got fixed. And in retrospect, didn't need to worry, but people worry about that, and then some parents refuse, and then it goes underground for another generation until that person gets to being an adult, and maybe they're in a situation of having a kid, and suddenly they see their kid having the same struggles, and that's perhaps at a time when somebody will get a diagnosis. But you could not be. There is a new terminology which is AU ADHD, so it's autistic ADHD. That was not legal until 2013.
Is that added to the DSM-5?
Yes.
Because the 5 is the newest version, right?
5 is the latest version. There'll be a revision at some point. So they take about 10 years
right,
to process. Yeah. So AU ADHD is a new diagnosis. Until that point, you had to be either autistic or ADHD. And if people had to be put into a bucket, maybe they got dropped in the autism bucket. Or maybe they got dropped in the ADHD bucket. But then ADHD is also politicized by people who are saying, those terrible tablets. But the reality is that ADHD...
Tablets as in medicine or tablets as in...
No, medicine.
Right, so
medicine.
That's the Australian word for tablets. I learned that from you. I mean, no, like I say pills.
You say pills, yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to clear that up for them because I don't think I heard that until I started talking to you.
Taking the pills, doing the drugs, whatever it is. But people have a view that you need to wake up to yourself and sort of get a grip, focus, get a grip. But it's a bit like telling somebody who's got type 1 diabetes, a sort of insulin-dependent diabetes, like telling them just not to be diabetic.
Right.
Like it's actually a genetic trait. It is 70% heritable. So it goes down the line, and and children who have ADHD are likely to have heard the word no 20,000 times in the classroom by the time they're in year 6. They hear it 6 times a day, 5 days a week, and that doesn't count extracurricular. 20,000 times. Wow. If someone gave you negative feedback, like stop that, don't do that, that's not wrong, that's not right, what are you doing? Or worse, they attached your name to it, sort of like, oh, you know, Robert, what are you doing? Stop that, Robert. You know, everybody focusing, everybody looking at us, okay. Alex, are you focusing? And using people's name as a weapon.
Yeah.
Teachers really need to stop that. And and it's, so that anxiety, everybody with ADHD has anxiety, and that can be changed by changing, putting the kid at the right spot in the classroom. Don't put them up the back.
Yeah.
And rotate the seats. Make sure the lighting works, because there is people with ADHD, 51% of men with ADHD have a reading disorder, and 46% of women with ADHD have a reading disorder.
Wow.
Compared to 7% of women without ADHD, and 14% of men. So women are actually way worse off, and they are often unrecognised because people think, oh, that's a boys thing. So there is research coming out of Japan which says it's actually a 1-to-1 ratio.
Wow.
So it's underdiagnosed.
Yeah.
So, and it's and that's, I think, what drove me towards wanting to share information, because basically if you don't make it to the end of high school in Japan, that's data from Kondo and Tabuchi in 2010 suggested that if you don't make it to the end of high school, 49% of women will be smokers, and 69% of men will be lifetime smokers.
I have to admit, I read the book ADHD 2.0.
Yeah.
And I've talked to you a lot.
Yep.
And it describes a lot of my issues with ADHD and things like that. And part of me, it feels really good to know I'm not alone, or that's why this stuff is like this, or, that's why I have these predilections. But the other part of me, it feels bad almost that I'm like, this textbook can explain me, right? Like, this is why I have this tendency or that tendency. So yeah. I don't know. So, I mean, like, how do you feel about it? Like, sometimes I feel better knowing more. Sometimes I feel worse knowing more. That it's almost like I don't have control. That I'm a statistic, and I fit the statistics. I know.
We're all statistics. I'm just going to quote a little bit from the ADHD 2.0. It's written by Dr. Edward Hallowell and Dr. John Ratey. Audience members might know of Dr. John Ratey from the work of the PANSIG, which are things like brain breaks, which the late Professor Mark Helgeson was so influential on, sort of actually physical activity, getting your students to stand up, and Professor Curtis Kelly also reinforces that. Make your students stand up, get the blood oxygen going. So let's just have a quick look at this. For example, traits. They describe it as a series of traits. So, for example, a useful trait is, she says, squishing her phone. Okay, a useful trait: passionate, zealous, idealistic, will sacrifice everything for a cause or a friend. Problematic: can become rigid in the service of a cause, can become fanatical, strident, irrational, Captain Ahab syndrome. And then there is, and then there's another one which is a dreamer par excellence, visionary, lives on the wings of imagination, flights of fancy, but sometimes gets so bored by reality that he or she just ignores it and gets into trouble for having doing so.
Yeah.
And then honest to a fault, will say what others don't dare to say, outspoken and blunt.
So I actually keep that list. I have that list printed out, and I keep it up in my office. And I like I said, I still don't really know how I feel about it, because it does feel good to look at the positives, because I check off something like 18 of the 20 things on that list, both sides. But it's the left side that I can't stand reading. But then I go to the right side, I go to the positive side, and I'm like, okay, these are my qualities. But then I go back to the left side, and then I go back to the right side. So in a way, it makes me feel good and bad. I don't know. It's hard sometimes to put a name on it. Feels good, but then it's like, okay, you have cancer. Oh, well, now I know what it is, but I have cancer. So it's kind of that feeling. I don't know. I can't put that genie back in the bottle. So I do
Yeah.
I do my best to focus on the positives
Yep.
and fix or be aware of the negatives.
Yeah, and it's there's lots and lots of coping mechanisms people can use, and again, assistive technology and things like phones.
Yeah, we need to
Phones
get
are
to we need to
really
get to the
helpful.
technology.
Yep.
I got one question before we do that. So one of your priorities is kind of to take the shame away.
Yep.
From neurodiversity.
Yep.
and the openness of it. So
That's right.
do you think all neurodiverse people should be more open, or do you think the choice should be theirs, or how?
The choice should definitely be theirs, but we should be looking at how we can reduce the barriers. If we can reduce the barriers, there is absolutely no need for somebody to declare their situation. If we teach in an inclusive way, and inclusive doesn't mean it's not like we do things to make lessons inclusive means that you don't, other people miss out. It doesn't work like that.
I think
Everybody benefits by
I think I
inclusive
finally
strategies.
understand. Like even though we've been talking for years, it's kind of like the idea of a unisex bathroom.
Yeah, it's that
Like
simple.
it doesn't. You don't need to know. It's just there.
It's just there.
So
Yep.
that finally makes sense to me. So it's not about giving this student accommodation. It's about trying to make your classroom so that you don't even need accommodation.
That's exactly
except
right.
for extreme.
That's exactly right. And I think that Japan is actually in a good position to achieve that. It's actually in a good position because of the layer of technology that is being put in place. Because Japan has the global information gateway for all initiative. It's also known as the Giga School initiative. And some of this work builds on earlier research by people like Professor Emeritus Hiroyuki Obari, who's presenting all the time.
Yeah, he's everywhere.
And so he was presenting data back in 2009 that about 70% of people preferred to study on their phones. But most teachers prefer to study on a computer.
Yeah.
But that's not where the students are. And so the Ministry of Education is way ahead of the game and knows that people who have dropped out of education, they've researched and found that people would like to continue education, but they would like to use technology to do it. They've known that for 20 years, and they have set in place this Giga School initiative, and there are digital textbooks being developed. I looked at the prototype in 2019, the first digital Japanese textbook.
Like on a phone.
I sat in the Ministry of Education at a select committee meeting, and I watched the person who was designing the very first Japanese digital textbook. I watched the designer and the company presented at the Ministry of Education.
So when you say digital textbook, is this on computer, on the monitor, or any digital device?
On a device. It's like a Kindle, flicking through it, and you can press on something, you can listen to it, you can hit the button, the video will play, and you can change the colour, you can change the font.
So it's created from the ground up for this?
Yes, absolutely.
It's not just a normal textbook that's scanned in or something?
Nope, this is entirely built in from the ground up, and it fits with the paper textbook seamlessly. So if somebody needs a paper textbook, they have it. If somebody needs the digital textbook, they'll have it. But we have had a number of people produce studies saying that paper is best.
So I was going to get to that, right?
Yeah.
So there's even reading like a novel on a Kindle versus the paper version, there's just study after study after study that says, this percentage of memory just isn't, getting in your brain. So what about those studies?
I would counter that because when you look at those studies, go and look at the participants list, and you will find that all of the studies have only included people who were normative readers, had no known neurological or psychological issues, and often they were not left-handed. They actually kicked the left-handers out. And there's a few people in the community who've been through that, of being excluded from studies, because often people they were in studies as students to earn a bit of money or whatever, or get something, and they were excluded on the basis of being left-handed.
So to play devil's advocate, though, I'm thinking about our students, And let's say the textbook, the digital and the paper cost the same amount.
Yep.
5,000 yen. Aren't most students just going to pick up the digital so they don't have to bring books to school? And
that's another issue, because there's people have talked about the physical burden of on children of carrying a heavy bag and then carrying all of the paper books. Often, though, in practice, the teachers keep the books at the school.
Okay.
And the students don't actually carry them back and forth.
So
They
we're not
carry
talking
worksheets.
university necessarily. We're talking like K through 12. We're talking
Yeah,
elementary.
at the moment,
I mean,
yeah.
education in general.
Yeah, in general. So from 2020, I saw the first textbooks in 2020 which had QR codes, and all of the textbooks had a cross link in there, a point on it saying link to the social studies curriculum, link to the mathematics curriculum, link to this curriculum. And they were in the English textbooks, and there would be strategic links in the content matter to other subjects.
Wow.
And they had QR codes on every book for elementary school.
So this isn't option overload or information overload?
Nope, this is absolutely planned and strategic, and that cohort is going up through the system, and they have access to audio, which is the first time students have had control over it. Because most of the time they would hear the recording 2 times, 3 times, and it would only
or
be
the ALT.
Yeah, or the ALT, but the focus on actually having been one myself.
Yeah.
As well, the focus on the speaking and listening was lower than the reading and writing. So now students are under control. They can control it themselves. And as of 2021, all textbooks in Japan are required to be able to be accessed via audio or via print. So if you have a textbook that has a QR code in it, I do recommend you look at the textbooks you're using, look for a code, and if there is no code, you might even find a sticker on the book saying audio materials are available from the publisher's website. And that is law in Japan as of 2021.
So any textbook sold here?
Any textbook sold in Japan is required to have an audio option. If it doesn't, it's in contravention of the national law of barrier-free.
Wow. So I do want to talk about that. You have this book out called Barrier-Free Instructions in Japan.
Yep.
And it's edited with David Young.
Yes, Dr. Davy Young.
And Melody Cook.
Dr.
How did you get involved with those two?
Those two, I was presenting at PANSIG in 2019, and Dr. Cook came past my poster, and she looked at it and she said, right, I want to bring you to JALT Niigata, and where's your email, and come on up. I wanted you to talk to some teachers up there. And I did, came up there, and that's where I met the Phil Nguyen met him as well.
Right.
I met Mike Yap, who's people from around JALT organisations. And yeah, I did a presentation, and then just kept doing more and more. I presented at lots of different places during the pandemic. And then Melody told me it was 2020, and Melody rang me up and said, I'm listening to, when it was a JALT online conference, and she said, I'm listening to this guy, Davey Young, you've got to hear him, it's so interesting, quick. And so that was in the middle of his presentation, and so she actually started texting Davey during the conference, and she said, we're going to get together and put this together as a book, and we'll get lots of people to put chapters in. She asked Dr. Joe Miner,
Right.
From Canada Minor, and Joe accepted the proposals straight away. So
Dr. Young, he's kind of like the numbers guy, or he's the one who he knows all the rules, the laws,
quality,
yeah.
He has completely taken the.
I wouldn't even know to start how to look that stuff up.
Completely taken apart the whole legal system and all of the processes in it, and also the international frameworks. And he's just an exceptional authority on that. And he's also he applies all of that in his own classes. So
you work with Adam Jenkins right?
Adam Jenkins. Yeah.
Adam Jenkins. So
well, not together. I work. I have ideas with Adam Jenkins.
Okay, I've seen some of his work. I don't know if you work with it or it's influenced by you. Do you know much about? I mean, can you tell us about it? I know he does plugins or?
Yes. Adam has, and it is influenced by me. Adam has, with support from the Japan Moodle Association at his university, he has created a plugin for the Moodle system. It's called the accessibility plugin, and that system allows people using Moodle to change the background colour of the page that they're working on to any colour that suits them.
And that's like, why is that important?
Why is it important? It's important because for some people when they're reading, it will take up to 4.5 times as much energy to read material than others. So some people are highly sensitive to the text layout, the font, and for the folks back home, I want you to remember this. Left align your text. Do not use full justification. The reason is that it creates gaps, uneven gaps between words and letters, and it makes it much more cognitively demanding to read. So left alignment of all of your worksheets to make it easier for people to actually read. So
what other digital tools? We have this Moodle plugin.
Yep.
And I know there's some websites I've heard you talk about. So
if you're doing, and if you're like, for example, you've got a Moodle system, and if you want to give students some information to read, put the text in as a page. Create a page, because then the person can, all of their settings for their preferred display settings can be used. If you upload a PDF, they're stuck with white, and they're stuck with whatever font you've chosen. So you want to give them complete autonomy and agency in their in deciding how they learn. And once you put the text in, if you put it in as a readable PDF, they can select the text and they can listen to it. And that has been the big breakthrough when Japan signed on to the Treaty of Marrakesh on audio copyright, and that was in 2018, and that paved the way for the audio in the digital textbooks, audio in your phone, your ability to be able to select some text and listen to it. All of that is because of that process in 2018, which was basis of lots of work by the author of Chapter 13 of the Barrier-Free Instruction Book.
So I have one app on my phone that I think Seeing AI was.
Oh yes, Seeing
right?
AI.
So
yeah,
so
that's fantastic.
This app. It's for vision impaired people,
yes,
right? And
yes.
you take a picture of something and it'll speak what it is.
Yeah, it'll tell you what's in front of you.
Are there any other apps that you can recommend? I mean, anything. I don't know.
Actually, yeah, what I really recommend is from an organisation called Call Scotland, and it's not computer assisted language learning, but it's sorry, I keep forgetting the acronym. Call Scotland have got this amazing thing called the Wheel of Apps, and the wheel is it's a big wheel. There's one for numeracy, there's one for reading, there's an iPad wheel, there's a Android wheel, and they are just every kind of assistive technology you can think of.
Call Scotland.
Call Scotland.
Call
yep.
Scotland. Just Google it and this will come up.
Call Scotland, one word.
Okay.
Yeah. And the wheel, and you put in Call Scotland wheel, and up comes this amazing series of tools. It's just incredible.
So what you find what you might have trouble with,
yep.
and they can recommend an app for that.
Yep. It's just amazing.
Okay.
Absolutely amazing. I think the iPad wheel just got updated recently, but yeah, it's we are the people between our students and their success. If we don't provide them access to technology, they can't graduate.
Actually, that was another question I wanted to ask you. I'm glad you reminded me of that. So there's kind of two. We forget that there's teachers and learners. I mean, maybe we don't. But so there's teachers helping students, and then there's students helping themselves. Like
yep.
How much do you want the students to be able to help themselves, or do you think this kind of issue is more in the teacher's hands right now? Or
I think we have to give permissions to the students to help themselves, and we have to encourage them to use the resources that are available. And I often say to students, I'll show them, okay, this is a system. You can do this. You could do this. You have this choice. You have this choice, and all of these things will lead to a result.
Right.
I can show you the door. I can show you how to open the door, but you have to go through it.
So here's the dangerous thing. Maybe not dangerous isn't the right word. I remember many years ago, about 10 years ago, I had a student, and I saw myself sitting there, right? And I'm like, this student, he's having trouble. I know he's ADHD. I think he's ADHD.
Yep.
And I was so concerned because he's failing the class, and I know he's smart. And I went to the office, and they're like, don't say anything. You can't say anything to him. You can't say anything to anything. So how do you offer, what's the best way to offer students tools without kind of, not breaking these rules? So
okay, the very first thing you can do is you make sure that students have got access to anything you're teaching in paper. You make sure it's on a mainframe, whether it's on Teams or whether it's in Moodle, Microsoft, Google Classrooms. Make sure the content can be listened to.
So kind of going back to the inclusivity.
Yep.
So don't assume anyone and everyone is neurodiverse. Just try to include as many.
Just use those strategies. They're all on the table of the Barrier-Free Instruction in Japan book. There's a whole lot of detailed practical strategies, and if you get that right, they can function anyway. You won't watch them running into walls. They might need help with organisation. Some students might need, they might need to, might need to break things down into some steps, but show people the goal. Always show people what is the goal for the end of the course. Where are we going to be? Break it down into how we're going to get there. Do not say, okay, today we're going to learn to do this. Tomorrow we're going to learn to do this, because they have no idea where the goal is. And for people who are ADHD and dyslexic, they absolutely need much wider context. And people with ADHD need to feel urgency, interest, utility, and the other one was and relevance. You have to have all of these things together. But remember, a key word is they have people with ADHD live in the now and not now.
Live in the now.
Now, they're living now. Is it now? Am I doing it now? And you say, oh, not now. It's no concept. Like calendars don't make any sense. There's now and not now.
Okay.
And you have to be aware that you have to help them create a sense of managing not now.
Right.
And you do that by putting your assignments into the document management system and assigning it to the student's calendar as well as yours, and then do a simple assignment at the beginning of the term, which is the goal of which is everybody can log in, everybody can rename their document, everybody can use the word processing. They can actually start to use it, and make sure they know how to do it. Because if you ask a student, can you do this? They're going to say yes. But if you ask them, can you log into this? Can you log into that? Can you log into that? And Melody Cook came up with a great thing, which is, how can I help you learn? And they might tell you exactly how you can help them learn. And you do these things anonymously. I sometimes do them with named ones about, can you log into this? Do you want help? Yes, I want help. And I put a bit of humour in there. I can use this, I can use that, and then what's that? What is that? And often students will do that. But some of them actually surprisingly say that they thought listening to audio and reading a guidebook might be cheating. And I say, no, it's not cheating. You have permission to do this. And that is something that they're not used to do. Unless the teacher sort of tells them, yes, you have these tools at your advantage, please use them.
Yeah, I'm really specific about cell phone usage and AI usage in my room. And I'll say, something along the lines, use it. And when you can't use it, I'll let you know. So don't, please, they're tools. And I want you to get good at using these tools when appropriate.
Yes.
So, because the first day, they're kind of nervous, right? All their phones are away. And it's anyway, so it's good to be clear with them what they can use in the classroom or not.
One of my friends has got profound dyslexia. He's also an absolute genius. Brilliant at genetics, dyslexic, but rose genetics, not a problem. He could do all of that. And I remember him messaging me after he first heard of AI, and he was just like, wow, I can finally I can finally put what I want to say into words and people won't laugh at me. So you might think, oh, those students are trying to cheat, but you have to teach how, you have to, by saying, oh, you can't use any AI, is actually now ripping out the infrastructure that would allow the really disadvantaged people to finally be able to succeed, and then you say, no, we're going to take away the tech. We have to learn to balance the tech.
We are running out of time, so I want to ask you maybe one or two last quick questions.
Okay.
So, do you have an ultimate realistic goal that you would like to see accomplished, in neurodiversity, in overcoming these barriers? What would you like to see happen in Japan or the world in education? If you could just snap your fingers, or what's the end goal?
I would like people to focus on the content of what someone can produce, rather than what they look like, rather than what their handwriting looks like, rather than what they, where their activity in the classroom or something. I would like to see teachers actively designing usable interface material. I would like them to apply colorblind tools, because there are, for example, it's a 1:8 ratio of Anglo-European and Caribbean and West and Central Asian men are colorblind, and that means in Japanese people it's about 1 in 20 men. It's a much lower number of girls, but we need to be mindful of our use of color and our use of things like labeling of data in spreadsheets, and actually not only be aware of it, but to actually teach our students those skills so they can produce easy to read material, and they know how and why to use technology for inclusion. But number one is use a non-serif font. Number 2 is use left alignment.
Universally.
Universal. Use number 3 is don't use italics or underlining.
Bold.
And that's going to use bold and size for emphasis, and use left alignment.
So not bold, italics, and
we do not want we can use bold. Do not use underline. Do not use italics. Do not use all caps.
Okay.
Those are the key things, and the reason for not using justified is called the river effect. You can look it up. A Canadian typographer found that in 1995.
The river effect.
River effect, yeah. If you tip a page upside down that's fully justified, you tip it upside down, and you will see rivers of white running through it.
Oh.
So that's been known since 1995.
Yeah.
Nearly 30 years. So, and we've known about it, and people are still producing documents that are fully justified, and that is exclusive to people with reading disorders.
Wow.
So we shouldn't be, we need to rip down these barriers, and we need to finish.
Yeah, let's, I think we need to do a part 2 sometime. We still have a lot to, we got a lot to cover. So thank you very much, Alexandra Burke.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Robert.
Until
and please look for barrier-free inclusion in Japan, recommendations for teachers at all levels of schooling, available from Candlin and Minard website, or also from online services.
Amazon, I think, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.